But tonight, what I want to talk about is Star Wars Shatterpoint, and more importantly, should you pre-order it? It went up for pre-order on, I think it was the 30th of January, so about a week ago. However, we haven't really seen a huge amount about it yet. So what I wanted to talk about tonight was, what do we know about Star Wars Shatterpoint so far? A little bit about the surprise news about, shall we call it, Legion Kill Team appearing there last week. And then also, as I said, the main question really is, should you pre-order it? So let's take a look at that. So, Star Wars Shatterpoint. This is made by Atomic Mass Games. These are the company, if you're not familiar with them, the company that makes Marvel Crisis Protocol. And they kind of became the miniatures arm of the Asmodee kind of family. Asmodee is their parent company. Fantasy Flight Games is also part of that same kind of company. And what happened was Atomic Mass Games became the miniatures arm. So they now do all of Star Wars Legion, Star Wars Armada, Star Wars X-Wing. They also do Marvel Crisis Protocol. But Star Wars Shatterpoint is their new game that is coming out this summer. They've been working on it for a number of years, and we're starting to get some more information about it now. We know a little bit more about it. They've been drip feeding the information. We now know what's in the core box. We know what the price point is. As I said before, it's available to pre-order now as well. But we haven't really seen any gameplay yet. So I'm going to take you through what we know so far, understand where Star Wars Legion Special Operations, which is the Kill Team-esque thing that's just been announced, understand where that fits into the lineup, and then we're going to discuss about pre-ordering. So the core box, this is what it looks like. I'm sure you've seen this box many times, and it's quite some size bigger than the Star Wars Legion core boxes and the Marvel Crisis Protocol core box. It seems a bit taller. So that might mean that it doesn't display on your Kallax shelf. It might be some consideration for some people. And as you can see from the artwork, it's very much inspired by the Clone Wars cartoons rather than the movies and the TV shows like Legion is. And we also know the scale of the miniatures that will be in this are slightly bigger than the Star Wars Legion miniatures. And this is one of the things that kind of, shall we say, caused a few ripples amongst the Star Wars Legion community as well when this was announced. Now here we can see the back of the box. This tells us the contents of what you're going to get in that core box. And to be honest, there is quite a lot of stuff in there. So you get 16 miniatures inside the box. Now, although there are a couple there you can see, which are the battle droids, there's a couple of bases which have 3 miniatures on each one. So technically you're getting 20 miniatures, but they're across 16 bases. There are 23 terrain pieces in there, and we'll take a look at the terrain in a second. There are 2 movement tools. There are 5 range tools. There's 14 order cards. Now, as we know, there are 16 bases, but there's only 14 order cards, which would suggest that because there are 2 bases which have battle droids and 2 bases which have clone troopers on, I assume it's just like sort of one card with the same stats for both of those. So very much the way that Warcry does it as well. If you've got multiple models with the same stats, you just use the one card. There are 12 stance cards. Now, we don't know much about what stance cards are at the moment. I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do know about stance later on, but we'll touch on them when we talk about the gameplay. There is 1 mission card, which I found was a bit strange. 1 mission card, but we'll know more eventually. There's 9 struggle cards. We don't know a huge amount about those. There are 14 dice, 1 struggle token. There are 16 momentum tokens, 1 struggle tracker. We'll come on to that in a bit. There's a punch board with all the tokens on, and there's also the core rulebook as well. So you can see on the back of the box here, if we just zoom in, you can see all of these things as listed out there, and it shows you some images which look very nice of the models that are available in the box in the core set. It also tells you here as well what the recommended card sleeve sizes are. Now, I believe that there are a mix of different card sizes in here. Some are tarot card sized, and some are 6x4 cards as well. You can see that it's a 2-player game there as well, and it also says that it should play in 90 to 120 minutes. This core set will be sold as a different core set in multiple different, in specific languages. So for example, there is a core set in English, there's a core set in French, there's one for Polish, one for German, one for Spanish as well. However, the expansions that come out for this will be one box for the entire world, and it will have multiple versions of the cards inside. I'm trying to think if there's other games that have done that as well, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But I know other games have done it where they have multiple language versions. Essentially, it's easier to give you cards that you'll end up throwing away than it is to have different sort of boxes for all of the different regions around the world. So these are the models in a little bit more close up. Now I personally think they look fantastic, but then I'm a big fan of like the Clone Wars cartoons and Star Wars itself. So they might not be for everybody. I know some people are not overly keen on this kind of more cartoon image, but I really like them. So the minis are split into 4 pre-made squads that you get inside this box. There are 2 for the dark side, 2 for the light side. However, it's also been said that you can mix and match these models however you want to make your own squads. And that also means that you can mix and match kind of good and evil models together. So just because in the story they might be kind of bitter enemies, doesn't mean you can't craft some reason why they might want to work together and be on the same side. Now, there's a few reasons why I think this is a good idea. One, you can create your own stories in the Star Wars world if you always, those kind of what-if moments, which are always cool. I also think that what it means is that you can just buy the models that you like. So if you like this particular kind of, if like, let's say these were all sort of these were all expansions, if you like. If you like the Ventress model, but you want to sort of pair it up with some of those Mandalorians, you could absolutely do that and just buy the boxes that you like. Another reason I think it's good as well is what it means is every release that comes out is a potential purchase for you. It means that you're not necessarily waiting for something for your faction to come out, and it means you can just buy the stuff that you really want to see. The minis that you get in this box, we have a Sarge Ventress, who is the if I can pop on my little laser pointer here for those that are not familiar with Star Wars stuff. A Sarge Ventress here at the back. We have Kalani, who's this robot, and then we have 2 of these B1 battle droid bases. And these models are both on 40mm bases, and we assume that these ones, the battle droids, are on 50mm bases. And as you can see, there's 3 models to each of those bases. You're also in this part of this kind of dark side, if you like, the evil side. You get Lord Maul, or Darth Maul as you might know him. We get Gar Saxon, who is the one here with the shield here, and then we get 2 of the Mandalorian super commandos as well. So the way the box is set up is that this is one squad here at the top, and this is a squad here at the bottom. However, you can mix and match. Next up for the rebel side, shall we say, we've got Ahsoka Tano, or we should say. Here, one of the Jedis. We've then got Captain Rex at the back here as well. And then we have 2 of the 501st Clone Troopers. Now, what you'll notice is each squad is made up of like 4 bases, shall we say, or 4 models. And it seems to have in the core set a bit of a leader who has a lightsaber. So both both Ventress here and Maul with their lightsabers. And then we've also got Ahsoka here, and we've also got Anakin Skywalker, and they seem to be kind of teamed up with a bit of a character. So for here, obviously we've got Captain Rex with Anakin Skywalker. We've got Bo-Katan Kryze, and again we've got a character here in we've got Kalani here, and we've also got Gar Saxon, and then they kind of like flanked by a couple of, shall we say, like standard trooper type things. So 2 of the 501st Clone Troopers, and then we've got 2 of the Clan Kryze Mandalorians here as well, with Bo-Katan, and the same here. A couple of Mandalorians here, and then a couple of bases of the droids. So it seems relatively kind of balanced for the core set, but of course we'll know more as more information becomes available on how you actually build up your sort of squads. Now you actually get this terrain inside the core box as well. So it says that it comes with 23 pieces of terrain. However, each of these are kind of separate bits. So the ladders will be one piece, for example. I'm sure this little crate on the top will be one piece. These crates might even be 3 pieces. I've got no idea. But what I would say is there is quite a lot of terrain. If you see the unboxing that AMG did, there's quite a lot of bits of plastic inside that box to make up this terrain. So it's quite a sizable sort of piece of terrain that you get with it. It's not like necessarily just a couple of little bits of kind of like line of sight blocking thing. What we do know is the game is also relies a lot upon sort of verticality and about sort of I suppose having the high ground, shall we say, from Star Wars reference. And I think it's important to have some terrain with some height actually in the box as well. But I was quite impressed with just how much you got in the box. Now on launch weekend, or on launch date we should say, there is actually some extra stuff available as well. There's a couple of terrain packs, and there's another terrain pack called High Ground, which looks very similar to this, but it is not exactly the same. It's essentially, I think it's the same kind of walkways, except this kind of big block at the front isn't in it, and instead there's a bit of a tower that's kind of in the picture at the back here. So it's similar, but it's not exactly the same. And we also know that the game plays on a 3 foot by 3 foot table or a 3 foot by 3 foot plane surface. So you're going to need some terrain, but you're not necessarily going to need terrain for like a 6 by 4 table, shall we say. Next up, included in the box, is you also get 14 dice. We do know that these are the dice that you get in there. So there are 6 D6 defense dice, and there are 8 D8 attack dice. Now we know from, say, from Marvel Crisis Protocol, attack dice and defense dice are exactly the same. They're all D8s, so we know it's not going to work exactly the same way as Marvel Crisis Protocol does. But up until now, these are kind of like symbols that we haven't seen. We're not really necessarily going to know exactly what these are until we know a bit more. You also get 4 range rulers in here as well. So you can see these ones here. So the ones marked with 2, 3, 4, and 5 are range 2, range 3, range 4, and range 5. And these will be for kind of for measuring out shooting and things like that. Range 1 generally in these AMG games is the width of one of these, any one of these measurement tools. So that's generally with range 1, and then 2, 3, 4, and 5. You also get this 5th measuring tool as well, or a range tool it's called, and it's got these weird kind of angles to the ends, and this arrow kind of pointing up. So it's not easy to see what this is for at the moment. Now, because we know that the game kind of does rely upon elevation and height of terrain, it might be something to do with that. But at the moment, we're just guessing about that. And the other thing to notice is it does come with 2 movement tokens, or movement tools, I should say. There is kind of like a small one and a large one. We know from both Star Wars Legion and from Marvel Crisis Protocol, they normally use like a small, medium, and large, 3 different types of movement. This looks like it's only going to use 2 kinds of movement. So yeah, just kind of, I guess it just streamlines it a little bit more. So, onto the controversial topic of prices. Now, we know that in the US, it is going to retail, and this is a recommended retail price, for $164.99. In the UK, it's a little bit different, however. It's also going to retail for £164.99 at retail price. However, they have said that during the pre-order window, if you pre-order it, you can pre-order for $149.99. Now, what that's done is that's created some interesting prices from the kind of third-party retailers, because some people are selling it for $164.99 and then discounting down a little bit from there, maybe 10%, maybe 20%. Other companies are selling for the $149.99 and discounting it down from there by maybe 10 or 20%. So that I've seen all sorts of prices for this, anywhere from about £110 was the cheapest I've seen, all the way up to selling it for list price $165. So if you do decide to pre-order this, or you do decide to buy this game later on, make sure you shop about for this. By all means, support your local friendly gaming store, but it might be you might be saving in the region of £50 to £55 just by shopping around and just by looking around, because not everywhere is kind of using the same sort of starting point, shall we say. It might be after pre-order window is finished, once the game launches, we might see everybody go back to $165 and discount from there. But yeah, if you're interested in pre-ordering it now, you might be able to get it for like I say, for as little as £110. I have seen that it is 290 Australian dollars. And I've also seen that it's available for 145 euros, but I couldn't tell if that was the recommended retail price or if that was a discounted price. It looks like 165 is generally the price across every region, whether it's in euros, whether it's in dollars, or whether it's in pounds. We do know that the game is probably going to launch on the 2nd of June 2023. Lots and lots of the different sort of third-party stores that have this up for pre-order have June the 2nd as that launch date. I can't imagine that they've all got it wrong, so there must be something in the information that they've got from Asmodee or from Atomic Mass Games that suggests that's when it's launching. So yeah, June the 2nd, so not actually that long to wait now. Now, Asmodee, as I mentioned before, AMG's parent company, they have a store program. So certain stores that sell their products are signed up to a kind of a partner program called Hobby Next. And if you pre-order from a store that is part of that Hobby Next program, then you will get this early release of this alternative Padawan Ahsoka Tano, her miniature and her card for free. Now, this isn't a limited edition. This isn't like kind of a sort of like only available for pre-orders. This mini will be part of a squad pack in the future. So this is a chance to get her early. However, if you don't get it from the pre-order, if your local store isn't part of that partner program, don't worry, you'll be able to buy this in the future. And I thought about, well, that's a bit of a shame. You're not getting it free. Some people are getting it free. Some people are not. That's a bit of a mess. But then I also thought it's going to be part of an expansion pack, which will come with other models as well. And if you're somebody that wants to kind of collect these kind of models, or you like something from that particular pack, even if you get this free, you're probably going to end up buying that pack again in the future with this model in. So maybe it's not the benefit that it was initially. They've not really said when that pack's going to be made available. The only thing they've said is that they've guaranteed that the pack with this model will be released within the first year from the game's launch. So we don't know when it'll happen, but it will happen at some point. Now, what it does show is we'll be seeing alternative versions of characters in Shatterpoint in much the same way as we see multiple versions of, say, Spider-Man in Marvel Crisis Protocol. They will have different sort of names. So I think, for example, the one that's in the core box is called Ahsoka Tano, No Longer a Jedi, and this one is called Padawan Ahsoka Tano. So it'll be one of those things where you can't take the two of them in the same squad. They're like a named character, but you can like sort of you can take either one and they'll have slightly different rules. Now, also in that launch wave, this first wave of launch products, there's a few other things. You can buy the dice as a separate pack. You can buy the measurement tokens as a separate pack as well. But these are the ones I think you'd be more interested in. There's a couple of terrain packs, and as I said, this high ground terrain pack is very similar, but not the same as what comes in the core box. This big tower bit at the back, as I mentioned before, is what's different. And then there is this take cover terrain pack as well, which is a bit more kind of scatter terrain type stuff. Now, these are actually priced at $74.99, both in dollars, US dollars, and in British pounds as well. So not the cheapest of packs, but then again, they have some quite heavy discount as well online. The other thing that's available as well are these squad packs. So this one is called Twice the Pride, which has Count Dooku in it and Jango Fett. And then we also have the Hello There squad pack with General Kenobi and Clone Commander Cody and a couple of clone troopers as well. And again, you can mix and match these with what's in the core box. What we don't know, I suppose, at this point in time is how many sort of squads you will be running as a player. So you get 4 squads in the core box. Does that mean that you normally play with 2 squads each? Or does that mean that you only play with 1 squad but you have some options? That hasn't really been made clear yet. But these squad packs are priced at $49.99, again, both in dollars and in pounds. But I've seen these for like £35 available in the UK as well for pre-order. So there are some kind of discounts available. Now, gameplay, Star Wars Shatterpoint gameplay. We don't know a huge amount about it at the minute. And again, this is another one of those sticking points that people are saying, I'm not pre-ordering this until I've seen some gameplay, until I know what the game's about. And I do understand that. I do get it. I think that's fair enough. It's been thin on the ground, but we saw some things in the unboxing video. And we've also had what AMG call a transmission, which is basically like a web page post with some further information in it too. Now in the unboxing video we saw this, and this is called the struggle tracker. And we know this is how you'll track victory points during the game. And Will Schick, who is the product developer, the head of product development, showed this off in the video. And essentially what he said was there are a number of black cubes that you can just kind of see in his hand here. And there is also one clear cube. And what will happen is, if I can just change over here to a pen or something, the black cubes, you will basically put them in these end rows. So starting at 8, down to 7, down to 6, which reduces the length of this track from 0. So obviously the one side's for one player, the other side's for the other player. And as you're placing these black cubes in this tracker, it makes it easier for you to get to the maximum amount available on your track. And what happens is the clear cube starts in the center, and as you score victory points, it moves to your side. As your opponent scores victory points, it moves back towards their side. So if you're familiar with games like Dreadball by Mantic or God Tier by Steamforged Games, they use that kind of tug-of-war push and pull system. And this is how Shatterpoint is going to work. Now within God Tier, there's also points where the base kind of level that you can go to changes depending upon whether you're winning or losing. Because what that does is basically, if for example, let's say that something happens in this game and you block in these cubes, so the most you can score is 2 points because you're well in the lead, shall we say. What it means is your opponent only has to score 3 points to pull it back to their side. The most you can ever get is to 2. If you score any more points, it doesn't increase anymore. Whereas in they could score up to 6 points and pull it away from you, you would then have to score 7 points to drag it back. So it's quite possible that's exactly how this is going to work. Let me just erase those. It's quite possible that's how this is going to work from the way that Will Schick described it in the video, and I think this is going to be really interesting rather than just racking up kind of victory points. My experience from games that have this push-pull tug-of-war mechanic is you never really feel out of the game, because when you start to score points, you're actually taking them away from your opponent as well. It's not just them racking points up and you're trying to catch up. You're actually pulling it back towards your side, which I think is a really, really interesting mechanic, and it can turn the game around. Now, the other thing that they talked about during their transmission was they talked about the aim is to capture the pivotal conflicts between small, iconic groups of characters within the greater battles that we often see on screen. So that's what they're trying to do with Shatterpoint. It's those small squads, those kind of like sort of intricate, the mini battles within the bigger battle, shall we say. And the game utilizes what they've called a unique and distinct system for how and when units attack. Now, we don't know what that is yet, but the fact that they've mentioned there's going to be something interesting about the order mechanic, shall we say, and how and when units kind of activate It's going to be quite interesting. We know from things like Star Wars Legion, the way you you'll plan out your sort of your battle in advance, where you can there's almost that betting mechanic of who gets to go first and how many of your units will you definitely know will kind of activate at the right times. I wonder whether we're going to see something along those lines in this. Now, the struggle objective system gives a sense of building tension and payoff as the game progresses, is what they've said as well. And again, that's along that struggle tracker that we've just been talking about. They said they want to keep players engaged via changing circumstances, making Shatterpoint a game that's always posing the players with interesting questions. And from the moment a player starts building their strike team, all the way through to the final struggle, players will need to weigh their options carefully and adjust their plans on the fly if they want to emerge victorious. Now, that might just be a bit of marketing spiel, but what I'm reading from this is they're trying to make it more interesting than just I got a victory point, so I've won, like I've got 10 victory points, I win the game kind of thing. It feels like there's that push and pull mechanic, the fact that it's not always over. You can go and kind of take the fight back kind of thing. Now, they were talking about how best to execute a game centered on the narrative of fighting in Star Wars, because obviously things like fighting with lightsabers is not the same as kind of shooting laser guns across a battlefield. And they decided that combat shouldn't just be about dealing damage, but about using your abilities to claim objectives under fire, drive back your opponent and create openings for the rest of your strike team, all while using the environment to your advantage. Now, that sounds quite interesting. They're going to have, it sounds like there could be some kind of dual mechanic thing going on here, and we'll come back to that in a second. It says they showcase the themes of hope and struggle with combat trees, which is interesting, board manipulation and of attacks and abilities, and a struggle mechanic that charts the player's course to victory. All these elements capture the feeling of fighting a life or death battle with your back to the wall. They say mechanically, characters in Shatterpoint are expressed through their abilities and their combat stances. Now, if you remember back when we talked about what was in the core box, we talked about stance cards. And I do wonder whether these stance cards, combined with what they said about kind of sort of lightsaber battles, rather than just dealing damage. Somebody mentioned to me about, I wonder if they do this a little bit like they do in Moonstone, with that almost rock, paper, scissors, like we're going to battle together and I'm going to do a strike kind of thing, like a forward strike, and I'm going to do a defensive stance. I do wonder if there's something in there that's a little bit like that. I'm kind of spitballing that. I'm not saying that's what's in there, but it'll be interesting to see exactly how that works. And they're saying that basically the combat stances bring out the narrative feel of the characters. So Lord Maul's combat stance showcases an extremely aggressive and dangerous character who's focused on the destruction of his enemies above all else, while Obi-Wan's combat tree is less about raw damage and more about manipulating positioning and exposing his opponent, wearing them down and setting them up to suddenly find themselves out of position to claim a critical objective. And they're saying it's an innovative system that hasn't really been done before in tabletop gaming, and that's always exciting. So I'm looking forward to find out more about it. It's like we're starting to get a drip feed of information. We're expecting more information about the mechanics in March, and also the first demos of this game will be at Adepticon in March as well. So no doubt we'll start to hear more then as well. So Shatterpoint Kill Team, or Special Operations as it's also called, was announced last week, and this is basically like an expansion or another gameplay version for Star Wars Legion. It's basically gone into public beta testing, and you can download this now for free from the AMG website. And yeah, as I said before, this is called Star Wars Legion Special Operations. Now, I don't know a massive amount about this. I've not had a chance to read through the rules in fully. However, I do know that the stats have changed. So basically, you can use your Legion minis. The rules are essentially still Star Wars Legion, but they've changed some of the stats to take into account that you're not using big sort of squads anymore now. It feels that both in the timing of this announcement and the wording of the announcement, that Legion players were maybe feeling a little bit pushed out with all of the Shatterpoint attention, they weren't happy about the fact that the scale had changed from Legion miniatures up to the new scale for Shatterpoint miniatures. And there was a lot of sort of talk about why would you not just make Shatterpoint a version of Legion. We can use Legion miniatures. We've already bought Legion miniatures. Why would you not just make Shatterpoint a version of Legion kind of thing? And then the announcement basically said, if I can just kind of paraphrase some of the stuff here, and I'll just take some lines from it. They mentioned that basically that this is going to be a new gameplay variant of Legion. Legion will always be the core kind of variant, but this is kind of like an alternative play mode, if you like, multiple ways to engage with your favorite game is the way they worded it. And it says that basically the director of product development, Will Schick, and the development manager, Will Pagani, developed Legion's and developed by Legion's dedicated lead developer Andrew Dursum. Star Wars Legion Special Operations allow players to play out intense firefight missions between small squads of elite troopers, which sounds also like what they were saying about Shatterpoint. And it said it's been on their big dream board for a while for Legion. However, recent chatter among community showed us there is a very strong desire for a way to experience tactical and up-close and personal Star Wars Legion battle experience focused on individual trooper miniatures. So it feels like they're kind of thrown a bit of a bone to the Legion crowd. It feels like they're trying to kind of sort of show Legion fans and Legion players that they're not forgotten about. But it does kind of conflict a little bit when it feels that both games are kind of aimed at that small squad type stuff. What I would say is, from the aesthetic, Legion is very much kind of movies and TV. Shatterpoint is very much kind of cartoons and comic book type things. So the million dollar question is, should you pre-order? A lot of people are saying they don't want to pre-order until they've seen some gameplay, and I completely understand that. Some people think it's too expensive. In that case, don't pre-order. Some people say that they don't like the minis because they don't like the fact they're a different scale. They don't like the fact that they're not Legion. In that case, don't pre-order. Some people think it's a big exercise in FOMO and stuff like that, and the whole pre-order thing is just to hype people up and this fear of missing out. The fact that this is just a normal release, it's a normal launch, and that basically the pre-order is just to make sure that you kind of put your money down for it, and when it releases, yes, it might sell well and you might have to wait a little bit to get another one, but there's more coming. This is a game that is going to be sold for years to come, in the same way kind of Marvel Crisis Protocol is. So I wouldn't say there's a FOMO attached to it, because you're not missing out. But if it's not for you, don't pre-order it. Just wait until it comes out and then you can pick it up in the shop. Just wait for that kind of thing. I've actually given it some thought, because I haven't pre-ordered it yet. I gave it some thought. When the game was announced, I thought this sounds right up my street. It's exactly the kind of thing I want. I wanted to wait to hear about how much the prices were, which we now know. I wanted to know what you got in the core box. And I wanted to know enough about the gameplay that I could make kind of an informed decision. Now, I've decided to pre-order this, and I'm going to give you 5 reasons why I've decided to pre-order it. So the first one is to get one at launch. So I want to be able to kind of open it up on launch day or launch week or whenever it is, or right at the start, and I want to be able to get into it, and I want to start building minis, and I want to start painting them, and I want to read through the rules, and I want to be able to play it. Now, yes, I could just wait and just pick it up on the day, but if I pre-order it and I pay for it, I know it's just it'll get delivered. I'll be on the list of people to have one sent out kind of thing. I won't have to wait to kind of go and hope my local store's got one in, or have to wait a few weeks for restocks or anything like that. So one reason is just to make sure that when it launches, I get one. The second reason is I can cancel it. It's a pre-order. I haven't actually bought anything. I haven't committed I haven't sold my soul to get it kind of thing. If you go to any store and you give them the money as a pre-order, you can cancel it. They haven't fulfilled the product yet. They haven't got the stock to give you. You can ask to cancel your pre-order and you can have your money back. So if the gameplay stuff comes out in March and I decide it's really not for me, it's so bad that it's nothing like I expected it to be, I can just cancel it. Just as simple as that. And ask for my money back. The third one is, these are Star Wars minis that I like. I'm not a huge fan of the Legion minis. I don't know whether it's maybe just the older ones, but I find them a little bit chunky, like the scale's a bit funny. Sometimes they feel a little bit kind of like big heads and big hands kind of thing. They're not all like that, but like there's certain models that I've seen and certain models that I have, because I did buy the core sets. I'm not a massive fan of some of the models. I like the fact that Shatterpoint has a bit of a bigger scale to them. I like the Marvel miniatures. I like the fact that they have a bit of a bigger scale. I enjoy painting them. I love the fact that it's not squads, so I can just kind of paint individual minis and just enjoy it. So I quite like the difference in these kind of sculpts. So I like these minis. The fourth one is because of Marvel Crisis Protocol. I'm a big fan of Marvel Crisis Protocol. I love the minis. I love the rules. I don't mind the release schedule. Like I don't think it's kind of too sort of in your face. It's definitely a game where you can kind of pick and choose the models that you want, and you buy them when you want to buy them, kind of thing. And I like the fact you can kind of mix and match the models that you've bought to make up some interesting kind of squads. And a lot of what I've seen from Star Wars Shatterpoint is very much the same with this as well. I feel that Atomic Mass Games have done a very good job of Marvel Crisis Protocol. I think when they've worked on a rule set from absolute scratch to release, they've done a good job. I wouldn't necessarily include X-Wing and Legion and Armada because they kind of inherited them from Fantasy Flight Games. But I feel that AMG have given me enough confidence from what they've done with Marvel Crisis Protocol that I think they're going to produce a game that is in line with the kind of stuff that I like. So I don't feel like it's a massive risk. And again, as I said before, if I see something between now and June that I don't like, I can cancel my pre-order. And the last one is I'm excited for it. Like, it's nice to get excited for something. It's nice to see something that you really do feel that, like, you know, I can look forward to building and painting these. I'm looking forward to playing some Star Wars, like little kind of sort of 3 foot by 3 foot games. I'm looking forward to putting some sort of Star Wars terrain on a board. And I'm excited for it. Now, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But there's a Scottish saying about don't piss on the thistle, which basically means just because somebody else is excited about it doesn't mean that you have to kind of like sort of pour sour grapes on it kind of thing. Is that even a thing, pour sour grapes? You don't have to rain on their parade kind of thing just because you don't like it. Like let the people that are excited about it, let them be excited. You don't have to complain about the fact that you think it's too expensive. You don't have to complain about the fact that you haven't seen any gameplay yet. Like, everybody has a choice, and if somebody's excited for it, let them be excited for it. And I'm excited for this. So I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to pre-order this. And then when it comes out, we'll know. Because I'll have cancelled it if there's something I don't like about it. But when it arrives, I'm looking forward to building and painting it and playing some games.